On the 8th of January, 1815, General Jackson had met the veterans of Wellington at New Orleans and inflicted upon them the most disastrous defeat ever suffered by England and shed undying renown upon American arms. He saved America then, and he preserved its independence in 1832 by act of Congress. June 28, 1834, a change was made in the coinage laws of April 2nd, 1834 Adder Act. The legal ratio of silver to gold was fixed at 15-1, that is, 15 pounds of pure silver were the legal equivalent of 1 pound of pure gold, and this ratio was maintained until the passage of the Act of June 28, 1834. France and the other Latin states maintained a legal ratio of 15.5 to 1. Consequently, the United States overvalued silver when compared with gold. The bullion dealers, over on the alert for a profit, sent the gold abroad and sold it at a premium. To remedy this, the Act of June 28, 1834, reduced the quantity of gold in the Gold Eagle from 247 half grains of pure gold to 232 grains, or a reduction in the $10 gold piece from 270 grains of standard gold to 258 grains. A corresponding reduction was made in the half eagle and quarter eagle. A fraction over 6% of gold bullion was therefore deducted from the gold coins. This made the legal ratio of silver to gold stand at 16-1. By this act, silver was undervalued and gold made its appearance in circulation, and silver disappeared from the channels of trade. The object of the passage of this law was to supersede the United States bank bills by the substitution of gold coin as a circulating medium. The people remembered the great efforts of the bank to monopolize the entire volume of money in the country, and gladly received the 2 1/2, $5 and $10 gold pieces in preference to banknotes. This substitution of gold coin for banknotes greatly diminished the profits of the bank, and it immediately declared war upon that coin. Its subsidized press, its minions and dependents, denounced this species of money in terms of ridicule. The subservient tools of the bank, when offered gold coin in the ordinary transactions of business, would shudder and recoil at its appearance and demand United States banknotes as the superior money. In the meantime, however, in 1832, a presidential election was held. Henry Clay was put forward as the candidate of the Whigs and of the bank power. Andrew Jackson was the candidate of the Democratic Party and represented the principles of Jefferson. Jackson received 219 electoral votes to 49 for Clay. The prophecies of those Democrats that Jackson had ruined the party by his contest with the bank were refuted by a decisive vote of the people. Removal of the government deposits. The next step taken by the president to curtail the power of the bank for mischief was the removal of the government deposits amounting to many millions of dollars. After the bank so signally failed to obtain a renewal of its exclusive banking privileges, it did not alleviate from its policy of inflicting distress and ruin upon the people. From the Ist Day of August 1833 to the 30th of June 1834, it continued its contraction of the currency by calling in its loans, giving as its reasons, therefore, that the government was harassing it on every hand. It had ample time in which to arrange its affairs without seriously crippling the business of the country, and its excuse was not valid. Although many millions of public revenues were under its sole charge, constituting a loanable fund for the benefit of the bank, its hireling press teemed with abuse against the administration of President Jackson. The president, in view of all the facts within his knowledge, entertained the opinion that the bank was insolvent and an unsafe depository for the public monies. He had previously communicated his belief to Congress as to the unsafe condition of the bank, but such was its influence in that body that the House of Representatives, by a practically unanimous vote, declared its confidence in the institution. In the lawful exercise of his powers, the president ordered the Secretary of the Treasury, through the 5 government directors, to investigate its financial condition. The directors made a demand upon the bank for an inspection of its books, but they were denied access to them. In the face of the obstacles thrown in their way to ascertain its true condition, the directors made an investigation with astonishing results. To obtain a full, true, and complete statement of the expenditures of the bank for political purposes, the official directors submitted a resolution to the full board of the bank, requesting the cashier to furnish a statement to the board as early as possible, showing what amount was paid out for certain purposes, the sums of money paid to each person, the quantity and names of documents furnished by him, and his charges for the distribution of them. Similar statements were requested from the various branch offices of the bank. The resolution was voted down by the board of directors, and a substitute was adopted expressing inexplicit confidence in the course of its president, Nicholas Bible. Subsequent events gave satisfactory explanation why the officials of the bank pursued that course in refusing an inspection of the books. Upon a report of the government directors setting forth these facts, the president assumed the responsibility of removing the public monies from the bank and distributed them among the various state banks. In this course, he met decided opposition to this order in his cabinet. The Secretary of the Treasury, William J. Duane, peremptorily refused to obey the command of his chief, and for this act of insubordination, he was summarily removed from his office. Attorney General Taney was appointed to fill the vacancy occasioned by Duane's removal, and the order was executed to the letter. The bold stand taken by the president in the removal of the deposits stirred up the wrath of the bank party in Congress, and Henry Clay offered a resolution in the United States Senate as follows. Resolved, that the president in the late executive proceeding in relation to the public revenue has assumed upon himself authority and power not conferred by the Constitution and laws, but in derogation of both. This resolution censuring President Jackson was adopted by the Senate on the 28th of March, 1834. The bank pointed to this action of the Senate as proof of its great power. On the 15th day of April, 1834, President Jackson transmitted a message to the Senate respectfully protesting against this implied impeachment of his official acts. His communication to that body was a magnificent exposition of constitutional law, and he severely arraigned the Senate for passing judgment upon him without granting him an opportunity to be heard in his defense. 3 years afterward, the resolution of Clay was expunged from the journals of the Senate. The president was fated to emerge triumphant from every contest with the banking power. The bank still continued its warfare upon the people. It avowed its purpose to precipitate a widespread panic. It announced its intention to crush the business of the nation unless the order of removal was recalled and the deposits restored. The pressure brought to bear by the bank was directed at the chief commercial and industrial centers. The havoc wrought by it was as broad as the range of its operations, and its course was sustained by politicians as one of self-defense. Public men who were deeply indebted to it openly upheld its conduct. One of these purchasable demagogues owed the bank the great sum of $100,000, and his defense of his owner was in direct proportion to his obligation to his master, the bank. One loan of $100,000 was made by it to a broker in New York City, at which time it was steadily contracting the currency at every point where it was represented by an office. The broker to whom this immense loan was made accumulated a fortune by speculating with this money upon the misfortunes of others. Distress meetings were held everywhere under the auspices of the bank. Resolutions were adopted and memorials were presented to the president, requesting him to rescind his order of removal, but without avail. The presidents, vice presidents, and various other officers of the so-called distress meetings were selected from those who had supported Jackson for the presidency, which fact was always announced to the people. The petitions, memorials, and remonstrances presented to the president but served to strengthen his determination to crush the bank, and the last fangs of the oppressors were pulled by the removal of these deposits amounting to $40,000. It must be borne in mind that during the administration of Jackson, a controversy arose between the United States and France with reference to the depredations committed upon our merchant marine by the latter nation during the Directory. A treaty had been concluded by the administration with the Kingdom of France on the 4th of July, 1831, by the provisions of which the latter power agreed to pay the United States the sum of $5,000 as indemnity for such depredations. The French authorities failed to pay the first installment thereof, and the Secretary of the Treasury, under the direction of the President, drew a bill of exchange upon France for the amount. The bill was transmitted to Paris through the United States Bank as the fiscal agent of the government. The authorities of France refused to honor the bill, and it was protested, whereupon the bank seized upon the government funds in its possession to the amount of $170,040, which it claimed as damages for the protestation of the bill. This high-handed procedure was clearly illegal on the part of the bank and violative of the Constitution, which provides that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury except through appropriations made by Congress. To force a suspension of specie payments by state banks of issue, it drew immense bills of exchange on Paris, where it had no money for the payment of them, then drew vast sums of specie out of the banks of New York City and transmitted it to Paris to meet the bills so drawn by it. In speaking of the course of the bank in attempting to force a suspension of specie payments by the state banks of issue, Mr. Royal says, It was certainly not too good to do so, and in the year 1841, just before it finally expired, it is proved to have attempted to create a general suspension by forcing the banks of the city of New York to suspend. The manner of this attempt was afterward related by its cashier. It consisted in selling bills in unlimited quantities on Paris, at this time in great demand, where it had not a cent to meet them, and drawing the coin with the proceeds of these sales out of the New York banks and shipping it abroad to meet these bills as they made their appearance there. The bills, however, got to Paris before the coin came back protested, and the great bubble was finally pricked. This act was committed by the bank to embarrass the government, to emphasize the panic then beginning to rage, and to bankrupt the business interests of the nation. In short, no trick, device, or artifice was too villainous or traitorous for the bank to injure the credit of the government and the happiness of the people. The bank again failed to obtain a charter in 1841.